Martin, what kinds of businesses have you worked with so far?
I've worked with several companies so far. So I've worked with kind of a scaling business, anywhere between 5 to 40 employees. But recently I've worked with a business which is a lot larger than that, up to 100 plus employees, and currently working with another company which is probably around the 10. For the larger business, we were really just focusing on the consistency of the process and how we can assist with the onboarding. They had a team assembling a product, and one of the new team members had been there for quite a while, but his output wasn't quite right compared to kind of the expectation. It had been a couple of months now, and a couple of questions had been asked. So I was asked to come in, and I worked and trained someone within the business to be able to do what I do. And we just reviewed all of the systems that they had in terms of how they assemble these products. The final outcome was that one person's output alone increased by 60% over 2 weeks. Really just because they had a better understanding, knowledge, and at the point of assembly, they could also go back to the system and actually see the step-by-step guide if they ever had any point of confusion.
Everyone is talking about AI and business automation. From an operational risk perspective, how can business leaders make sure AI strengthens their operations rather than simply accelerating existing problems?
A lot of businesses are seeing the potential of AI. They are seeing the overall benefits that it could bring. But I always also think that AI is an amazing magnifying glass. If you haven't defined your processes, then you introduce AI, it would just scale the chaos a lot faster than any person could do. But if you've got your business processes set and understood, again, it doesn't mean they won't change, but having that foundation for the AI tools to work on is absolutely critical.
How do you identify where AI and automation could be most useful within a business?
And the other part as well is, I think when we sat down and walked through your critical client flow, which is the process that goes from how you engage customers all the way through to the selling process, the collection delivery, all the way through to referral. I'm working with another company at the moment. We're in the process of developing their systems. But the end point, when we have that critical client flow in place, which in reality is pretty much the 20% of all the processes which deliver the 80% of the returns within the business, we'll take those, we'll put them into an AI and actually ask the AI, where are the opportunities to automate this? What are these moments where someone's copying and pasting from one document to another, which we really know we don't need to do, but how we then leverage into true human potential. Also at the same time, just making sure that there's still a human in the loop somewhere, that last point validation, so that nothing does leave the door and it's still building their confidence to the point where you have that confidence in the AI tool and it can deliver what you need without your intervention. So that's pretty much the process we go. Along that journey as well, we'd also build what we refer to as the AI business brain.
What is an AI business brain and how does it support the business?
So if all this information is sitting, so for example, if you're using ChatGPT, we create the GPT. What that then does is it start to remove the founder dependency, because if anyone's got a question about anything, ask the GPT. That should then come back to the answer from that knowledge source. If it doesn't, you've got a system missing, which you then need to add that information in as well. Start building this kind of, I guess, knowledge depository of your business systems DNA, so anyone can ask it. So not constantly asking you, which then allows you to focus on the bigger things, which is what you want to do.
How does an FMEA type analysis help a business understand and manage risk before a product moves into the market?
What is my overall FMEA type analysis? And how do I understand and either accept or mitigate those before it actually moves into the market? Because as you rightly say, yeah, to change some documentation or paperwork is dollars in terms of cost, whereas as soon as the product's into the market, you're up into the hundreds of thousands plus. And it's back into the discipline and the understanding and the knowledge to do that, is my own belief. I've been in companies in many times before when, yeah, products released and then you realise that it need to be updated because there may be a condition that hadn't been considered within that first assessment. But when you're always doing the FMEA type of evaluation or risk evaluation within your team, you're not necessarily thinking about all of the user kind of actions or approaches either. If technology advances and they're still using your equipment, well, you definitely wouldn't have had that on your risk matrix. So there are times when you can be tripped up, but at the same time, not dealing with it or doing something about it still add to risk.
Do you normally start with a formal risk assessment?
No, I typically look at what I refer to as the operational risk within a growing business. And the six key things I look at: founder dependency, key person dependency, information between teams, unclear decision making, inconsistent processes, and then slow onboarding. They're the kind of the key things that tend to affect a business when it's growing. The main reason is because when the revenue grows, the revenue line typically outpaces the operational change part. That's where all the mechanics start to fail or become more fragile.
Could you describe each of those risks and explain how they might affect the business?
So the first one I mentioned would be founder dependency. That's when pretty much all decisions within the business will always route through the founder. Typically, this could be misunderstood or misconstrued as good leadership, but in reality, what they've actually created is a bottleneck within the business. If they're not available and things don't get done, everything stops. If they go on holiday, everything's going to stop for that period of time. And the challenge there is that it's not empowering individuals, and with all the information which is stuck in their head, the challenge I face then is how do we get it out to be able to be shared, disseminated amongst the teams to the right people. And the big challenge with founder dependency is, whilst it's great when it's a very small company, because you started it, you know everything. What it's not doing though is allowing you to work on the business as it's growing, because you're spending all your time in the business. Or conversely, what you end up doing is spending a lot of time working. So you're no longer, so you basically traded a job for another job in the business. So that's our founder dependency. The next one would be key person dependencies. When the business grows and that knowledge and information starts leaving the founder's head, it may then go into someone else's head. You've always come across scenarios that, how do I do this? I don't know, ask Sarah. Sarah knows how to do that. Where's this information? Sarah knows. How do I find this? Sarah knows. All of a sudden, this critical information around your business isn't documented anywhere. It's all sat in someone's head. Again, that's a real key vulnerability, a fragility. The other part is when the business starts to grow and more people become involved, is how the information interchanges across teams. If there's breaks in information in the teams, it's that kind of context of it fell between the cracks. This also ties quite clearly into kind of unclear decisions or ownership. If someone doesn't own something, then it's likely to fall within the gaps. It's really just recreating those boundaries. If you're in the marketing group, then you don't need to do the sales part. You've got a clean line in terms of your role and responsibility, and there's a handoff into the sales role. The next one is unclear decisions, which is covered slightly on there. Again, it's also making sure that the founder's not always the person where decisions escalate to. It's having that clear decision framework in place and ownership on each of the systems. My favorite is, again, when you're growing and you have many people doing the same thing, inconsistent processes start to fall into place. You start to see subtle variation, subtle changes, subtle differences, all which can affect your final customer experience. We've all heard of the times when, try and phone a helpline. You may go through several people and all of a sudden you find someone who's really helpful. What are they doing different to the other people? How can't the other people capture this magic that one person has? The example of the manufacturer I shared earlier, there's one guy there who was an absolute brilliant on assembling these units. We captured what he did, shared it with everyone else, and now that's our new consistent process. I'm slipping into slow onboarding here. When you have your consistent processes, it's known and it's shareable. That one person who was new into that production or that assembly role, by having a better system in place, which allowed him to see the steps needed, watch the video of it being done, allowed him to increase his output by 60% in 2 weeks. And they're those kind of 6 key pieces which I look at, which ultimately are all relatively underpinned by just good systems within the business, which are accessible, shareable, and again, it's not creating systems that then sit in a folder somewhere else. It's making sure they're usable and accessible at all times.
How do you help a business owner identify which of these operational risks exist within their business?
I put together a very simple 6-question questionnaire or assessment tool, which asks the person's viewpoint. So say on the founder dependency, there's literally 6 answers. You choose one of those. It can range from, if I walk away for 2 weeks, a business breaks, to, yes, I can go away from my business for 2 weeks, and when I come back, it's better. They're the kind of two extremes, and there's some questions in between. And based on where you tick, it will then pretty much say, okay, there's a bit of a risk here, or no risk, very high risk, mid risk. From there, we go through and say, okay, we need to start capturing the stuff that you can't leave and making sure someone else is able to continue this in your absence.
So, could you say that if a business owner cannot go on holiday, switch off their phone for 2 weeks, and trust the business to continue, there is probably an operational dependency that needs attention?
The real aim is how we can then implement systems so that the business runs like a Swiss watch. Absolutely beautiful and perfect. The other part as well is that when the business is better when you come back from a holiday as well, which is possible. That's a challenge when you are the founder. Your business is your baby. You then employ someone to help you with it. But how can they help if they don't know what you
Definitely.
want them to do?
Definitely.
If the system's wrong, the outcome's going to be wrong. As simple as that. If the system's right and the outcome's wrong, that's a different conversation. But you've got to give the right guidelines and information to get what you want and clear. Ultimately, as the founder, we can spend a lot of time in the business doing lots of things which aren't actually adding value. But as soon as you can allocate those tasks elsewhere, it's now freed your time up to actually think about what I think it's Michael Gerber always said. It's not working in your business, it's working on your business. How are you getting that vision of where you want to grow, new markets, new things, but having that time to do that without being dragged back down into the weeds of the business. You wouldn't start a business to just work harder.
But what if you are naturally a hardworking person and cannot stop working hard?
That's even better, because as soon as you're taking off all the smaller tasks, you've got more time then to put this hard work onto the vision. Ultimately, you start a business, and at some point there's an end point on that business. The more value you can add into that business, the more you can then recoup at that end point. That's the simplest way I see things, is there is a reason why you're doing what you do, but there's also that end point. The more systems, the more that your business runs without you, the more value there is at that end point, because you don't need to be a part of that deal. When I choose to sell, for whatever reason that may be, I will get a better value for that business because I don't need to be a part of the deal. There's no information stuck in my head. It's all within the business. It's all known. It's all systemized. Anyone should be able to buy that business and still run it. Whereas if that wasn't there and it's all in my head, then yeah, it's a totally different story. So systemization and minimizing all of your operational risk within your business will add value in the long run.
So, if someone wants to sell their business, systemization is a key area to focus on.
What I've read elsewhere, that it's not a deal breaker, but it definitely will affect the multiplier on the valuation. There's also that point where it really matters. When you're starting your business, you want to know what you're doing. That's that point to start to capture that information. The easiest way to capture information that we use is either using Loom and videoing the screen while you're doing it. You don't need to do anything with the video, but you've captured what you actually do. And at some point in the future, you can then turn that into a system, which would be the step 1, step 2, step 3. And then that's available when you want to start to onboard people.
If a business is systemized, can it also adopt new technologies more easily and confidently?
Exactly. More importantly, you've got a solid baseline. Coming back to
Yes.
the quality part, you've got a baseline which, if every system that's being followed, should have continuity and consistency with less variation than if you didn't. As we know with any other manufacturing process, if the demand increases, revenue goes up, and the demand on the processes increases, But you've then got a solid foundation to change upon. If you're in a business with no systems and all of a sudden your sales doubled, you then go back to those who are doing the processes and you think, what do you do? Ah, okay, what do you do? Okay, they're all different. Which one are you going to improve? Whilst also trying to cope with this increase in sales. So having something, it may not be perfect, but having something is still going to be better than nothing, which you can then build from.
So, systemization is an instrument that helps business owners control the business in a healthy way.
What I do is help growing businesses reduce their operational risk by systemization of their business. Really sensing that kind of feeling of founder freedom. You didn't start a business just because you wanted another job in disguise.
You are providing a valuable service. You're helping business owners build stronger businesses while also having more freedom to enjoy their lives.
That's the main aim, but it's always that challenge though. And it almost comes back to the conversation we had earlier about risk. Is that risk is always seen as a risk, and there's always a cost to mitigate versus a cost of not. And I think a lot of the times, many owners actually see this and think, yeah, I need to be on this.
Everything we're talking about is important, but we're now in the era of AI. How does systemization affect a company's ability to implement AI?
When I speak to a colleague of mine who is more of the AI specialist, he'd always say that if he's brought in to a company to do an AI implementation, if there are no systems included, or if there are no systems within that business, implementation could take ending up to 3 months. Whereas if there are there, then it could be ending up 2 weeks. Yeah.
That's a significant difference. 3 months compared with 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. If you don't know what you're doing, then how do I expect an AI to know what they're doing?
Does that mean systemization itself can take around 2.5 months?
If I was to do one of my sessions or an engagement, that would typically be 12 weeks. And that would be looking at all of the systems on the critical client flow. Now, that would be a worst case at that timeline. But again, it depends on availability, who's there, how many people involved in that process, agreeing and getting to that point of consensus as to what it is that needs to be done. But ultimately, if he wants to do an AI implementation and there are no systems, then they've got to get the systems done first for the AI then to know what's done, how things are done. So it is an absolute foundation for any AI development. Again, if you don't get it right, all you do is magnify the chaos.